which we consider this also being a part of this topic, and I will be your host for this session. I have two more speakers here, which I'm very pleased to very briefly explain, and when it's their turn I will give you a bit more background. We have Ms. Lara Haidar from Lebanon and Etienne Gonin from UNDP, and they both will also take part in significant parts of this presentation. So, yes, these are our colleagues that you will see during the session. A brief overview. So as you have, in order to give you the context, I will briefly present the COLA program, what the mission is, who is involved, and what we would like to reveal with this project. Then we have a part where Lara will present the policy overview of Lebanon, specifically also focusing on the National Cooling Action Plan. Then Etienne will move on with technology highlights, so really showing technology that you can touch, not just so to say on paper, but real technology, progress, innovations that we've seen recently on the Chillventa fair, specifically on air conditioning. The Q&A, I think we will gonna make a bit more flexible, so you don't have to wait until there to ask you questions. We will just insert Q&A blocks here between the session. I think that makes it more interactive and more fun also for you. And let's hope we will be through this after like 75 minutes, and maybe then we still have some food left so you can fill up your energy again. So now I will provide a short introduction about the COLA program. This is about upscaling sustainable cooling. Unfortunately, we couldn't have an introductory note from the German government because the project is financed by the German government as part of their International Climate Initiative. The project started in the meantime already almost 2 years ago, in December 2020, and it will run until the start of 2027. The background of the project is that we wanted to have specifically a focus on the MENA countries, so Middle East and North Africa, because as I already also pointed out in the session 3 days ago here, climate change is not really affecting different regions in the world just on the same level, but predictions are that the MENA region will suffer specifically from that, which would mean that if we actually end up with a 2 degrees Celsius increase globally as an average, this region would face 4 degrees Celsius. And so it's specifically hit by climate change, and there is also a prediction that we will see a growth of final energy consumption, specifically electricity, by 50%. And so that's the background. That cooling constitutes a major source of energy consumption, of course. And what we want to do is to accelerate actually the technology change, the implementation of the Kigali Amendment. So this is all about acceleration and supporting the region in really also mitigating and adapt to the climate change. And you will see the 4 countries that we have in the project on the next slide, which in our project setup are to serve as hubs really for the whole region for a concerted and also concentrated action. We have Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan and Egypt, and as I introduced, I'm happy to have Lara here who will tell you a bit more than specifically about Lebanon. I was talking about the challenges already, and typically we only look at the cooling from the demand side perspective, but what we also try to cover is the change needed to adapt to this growing cooling demand. So also the structural energy sector challenges that we see, the switch to renewable energy, of course, but also coping with the steeply rising electricity needs is a challenge in this region. The impact of the project and also of the hubs that we strive to have in the region is that we really want to have this holistic approach, so not just looking at the technology, not just looking at reduction of HFCs, but really also on the building efficiency, which is a part of the holistic approach that we see in our project. You will see the cornerstones of the project in one of the next slides, but it's really important to understand that in principle, these 4 countries are really meant as regional hubs, as multipliers, to encourage learning between countries in the region and also beyond that region. We have quite nice and very sophisticated consortium. Of course, the most important is the national partners that we have in the region. IEG from Egypt, for example, Istanbul Aydın University from Turkey, the Royal Scientific Society from Jordan, LCC from Lebanon, and RICRI also from Jordan. Here is representing more the from Egypt, sorry, representing more the overall regional view in this project. Then we have a very strong technical expertise in the project with Öko-Recherche, who are an environmental consultancy, who really know all the in and outs of the Paris Agreement, the Montreal Protocol, the Kigali Agreement, the Kigali Amendment, and ILK Dresden, who is a real technology science institution who also do own developments of very efficient climate-friendly technologies. And then, as you can see, we have UNDP in the project, represented here with Etienne, and also Frankfurt School of Finance, because we see that not just technology and policy is, of course, important to spread and to accelerate these technologies, but also financing concepts that fit to this acceleration, and so to also get the relevant players for financing of this uptake on board. The overall building blocks of the project you can see here. I also mentioned policy, financing, technology, and demonstration. We also have an element which is focusing very strongly on stakeholder dialogue. I will get back on that also on the next slide. And we will also have a demonstration part. So the idea is that we will not just theoretically deal with these projects, but we will also try to get demonstration projects. So if anybody is here from these countries, you can already start to think about what kind of demonstration you would like to do with us in our project. And it can be everything. It could be technology demonstration of a natural refrigerant application, a super efficient application in a supermarket, for example. But it also could be a very innovative funding mechanism, a fund for sustainable cooling technologies, for example. That also would be a kind of demonstration, because, as I said, it's not just technology, of course, but the whole basket of aspects, the context that needs to fit together in order to push this uptake. So what we actually cover is refrigeration and air conditioning in commercial, in the commercial area, and air conditioning in residential buildings. And also belonging to this holistic approach, as you can see here down below, is that we specifically also include energy efficiency, also a topic that has been widely discussed here during the last few days. And of course the HFC phase down, but we also look at replacement and the safe disposal of refrigerants, also with a view to safety aspects of using natural refrigerants. So that's also a focus of our project, which means that also capacity building, training, awareness raising will be or are already or is already a very important component of our project. So as we can also see at the conference, what we try to do specifically by the stakeholder dialogue is that we want to bring together different worlds, the worlds of efficiency and refrigerants, which are a bit of parallel activities sometimes, and the same goes with climate change and the protection of the ozone layer. So we really would like to make this one topic and bring the relevant stakeholders together. Which you can finally see here on this slide. It's again showcasing that we already contacted all these players from policy, finance and technology in all the 4 countries that I just presented. And a first climax of this activity was a conference that we recently had in Istanbul with like 200 participants. We called it the regional conference of our project. And until the end of the project, we are going to have another one, which will take place, at least another one, one other one, that will take place in one of the 3 other countries. So it's not finally decided yet where this will be, but it was a big success. And what we could actually see is that it had exactly the accelerating impact and also fostering understanding of different parties, that we managed to have stakeholders from NOUs, also from other ministries, from banks, from financing institutions, international financing institutions also, but also utilities, for example, who can also offer their own financing schemes. But of course also the implementers, the manufacturers, the refrigeration, air conditioning sector, technicians, project developers, engineers, all convening at this conference and having an exchange how to accelerate this topic. So that's the overall mission of the project, and we are very happy that we have these 4 countries who really did already a great job in moving on this topic in our project, and therefore I'm very happy that Lara made it to this meeting, and she will present the policy around the cooling topic in her country in Lebanon. And I would like to briefly introduce her. So Lara, she represents the NOU team of UNDP. She joined the United Nations National Development Program in 2012 as a project assistant for the institutional support to the Ministry of the Environment project. And already in 2015, she joined the National Ozone Unit as a project coordinator. The areas of expertise include the implementation of the HFC phase-out management plan activities in Lebanon, development and enforcement of the necessary legislations related to the Montreal Protocol and Kigali Amendment, and specifically energy efficiency from the refrigeration and air conditioning sector. Lara also has a very suitable background. She graduated from the American University of Beirut with a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Science and a Master in Environmental Policy Planning. So Lara, the floor is yours, and I'm very happy to have you here.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Andreas. That was really a great introduction. So here I am. I'm going to be presenting progress regulatory analysis towards Montreal Protocol commitments and how we can link that to the National Cooling Plan that was implemented by Lebanon, and what is the major part and role related to the Cool Up project. Okay, so you're going to be helping me with that? Okay. So the main subsectors that the National Ozone Unit of Lebanon works at for the Montreal Protocol are domestic refrigeration, residential air conditioning, commercial refrigeration, industrial ACs, transport refrigeration, and the mobile air conditioning. Next. So already Lebanon has finished implementing the HCFC phase-out management plan, stage 1, and we are at the last tranche of implementing stage 2. That should be by the beginning of 2024 or mid-quarter of 2024. And these 2 projects comprise a combination of technology transfer of industries, policies and regulation, technical assistance, coordination and monitoring, and awareness and communication and management. So, upon successful completion of the HPMP projects, the RAC sector should result in a net sustainable reduction of 32 ODP tons. Right now, we are close today to 27 ODP tons, and we should be achieving that by the end of tranche 4 of HPMP stage 2, that would be in 2024, as I mentioned earlier. And this reduction will result in a net of CO2 equivalent emission reduction of about 0.66 million tons annually from 2025. Lebanon was one of the really first countries that ratified Kigali Amendment in 2019, and is part of Article 5, Parties Group 1, and this is the baseline and the increased consumption and the reduction steps that we will be following. Lebanon also ratified Paris Agreement in 2019 as well, and we are hopefully with the climate change team looking forward for more ambitious targets under the NDC, and here comes the coordination between the National Ozone Unit and the climate change team in terms of energy efficiency and having more ambitious targets in the national development in the NDCs that they will be going to be reporting. So the most important part is that Lebanon was one of the first countries in the region that developed a national cooling plan that was implemented by the National Ozone Unit and the Ministry of Environment with the coordination of the United Nations Development Program, and that was funded by KESAP, the Kigali Cooling Efficiency Program. So the national cooling plan had several main points under it, the first of which was the rock sector, and it was one of the first greenhouse gas rock sector emissions survey to be developed in Lebanon that included data collection for rock sectors and subsectors, assessment of the rock sector for energy consumption, of the regulatory framework and modeling of pathways and mitigation. And an important part under the NCP, which is the National Cooling Plan, was the maps and labels, because right now Lebanon has only low specifications for the maps and labels, but we are aiming to be above in the coming years to be having maps and labels that are along with the EU regulations and standards. So the development of the NCP included integration of the rock sector market assessment, assessment of funding and financing mechanism, and the market transformation for the rock sector in Lebanon, and proposal for including the NCP in the NDC, which is part of the Paris Agreement and the Climate Change Project, and proposed a roadmap for a proper implementation. Here where comes the assistance that we will be working on together with the Cool Up program. And of course, we did not forget to do training and capacity building for the service sector on all the new terminologies that include energy efficiency and consumption and the related common ground between climate change, NDCs, and Montreal Protocol ozone layer, also for the vocational school and the TVET program. So as I mentioned earlier, the market study under the NCP, it was established, it was the first dry greenhouse gas inventory for all major rock subsectors that included, Andreas, can you please move to the other slide as well? So that included both refrigeration and air conditioning. So the assessment included domestic, commercial, transport, industrial, refrigeration, as well as unitary AC, chiller, and mobile air conditioning. So these are the shops and the different models that the RAC assessment included in the National Cooling Plan report. In terms of identifying parameters for the appliances, we're looking at the energy parameters and the refrigerant parameters. Under the energy parameters, looking at the runtime hours, energy efficiency, and the cooling capacity. For the refrigerant parameters, it's the refrigerant type, charge size, and leakage rate. And these data were available from the RAC assessment. Otherwise, the team working on the NCP were applying international default data, but all the data were locally available from the assessment that they did in Lebanon. So, if we are looking at the direct emissions for refrigerant leaking to the atmosphere, as I mentioned, the charge size, the refrigerant type, and the leakage, whereas the indirect are the energy use emissions, which are the cooling capacity, energy efficiency, runtime, that goes into the emissions of the RAC sector. So this image shows that Lebanon, until 2010, used to have only 6 days of temperature over 35 degrees, but we are expecting, if we continue as we are now without developing more on the national cooling plan and including maps and having more awareness on energy efficiency equipment, to end up with 77 days above 35 degrees, which is pretty a lot. So this graph also shows the business as usual raw greenhouse gas emissions, whereas the mitigation raw greenhouse emissions will lead to 53% reduction, lower from the target, the one that is projected, and this is only after the application of the national cooling plan and the implementation of the national cooling plan and its targets. So as we mentioned, the direct and indirect emissions, here it shows that the energy-related emissions, which are indirect, are contributing to 68% of the emissions, whereas the direct emissions, which are leading from the refrigerant emissions, are leading to 32%. That's why our focus is always now on energy emissions and energy efficiency, which are the bigger part of the emissions. Importance of the impact of energy efficiency and the low global warming potential refrigerant on mitigation is, if we go step by step, I mean step one is we start by replacing with low GWP refrigerants, we'll be decreasing 30% in our emissions. If we implement proper maps and labels, and they will be approved and properly implemented by the government and the country and the industries, will lead to another 23% decrease, and also the replacing of fossil fuel with renewable energy would lead to 47% decrease. That would be by the trend by 2050. In the RAC assessment that the NCP did, there were two major low-hanging fruits, we can call them, which are the domestic refrigeration and the residential air conditioning. And these are the main bulk or the main percentage that could help us to reduce the country's emission and improve energy efficiency. And in comparison of the commercial, transport, industrial, and chiller, the main focus can be only on domestic and unitary air conditions. So the main goal to reduce the emissions of the NCP was to recommend the implementation of mandatory maps and not to have only voluntary maps in the country. And this shows how much it's important to move with the steps based on the survey data that was done under the NCP and the recommendations that were provided. The establishment of minimum energy performance standards, the establishment of a labeling system, and the most important part is to be able to have in Lebanon a testing procedure, because that would be the only solution for us to achieve on implementing mandatory maps. And I will be talking about the local manufacturers and the importance of having testing procedures in-house inside the country. So this table summarizes the GWH savings from the RAC sector under the mitigation scenario versus the business as usual scenario for 2030 and 2050. So it's important to note that this compression cooling powered by electricity, man and transport refrigerations are not included. So the RAC emission scenario in 2030 business as usual would be 7996. So the savings after the mitigation would be 1,418, whereas in year 2050 the savings would lead to 2,967. So this is an integrated policy approach needed for the success of the National Cooling Plan to achieve MAP, supporting policies, and MVE, the monitoring, verification, and enforcement of the minimum energy performance standards, because it's not only important to develop maps and to have them there and make them mandatory, it's also important to have monitoring and verification enforcement every few years and to update our maps according to the new technologies that are going to be entering the country. So as I mentioned earlier, we are at the step of voluntary standards, aiming to achieve mandatory standards in Lebanon, and these are the maps and the standards that were recommended under the National Cooling Plan and the safety standards as well. So to start with is to update the maps and label, to have a market transformation to low GWP and high energy efficiency appliances, and this cannot be achieved only in 1 year. This will take a little bit more time to achieve this progress within having more awareness, within the training and capacity building for the service sector and for the technicians, and to include more energy efficiency appliances in the market. Probably we can look at financial approaches like incentives to the people to buy more energy efficient appliances, and to include that trend. I mean, people to hear more about energy efficiency and people to know more about the importance of having energy efficient equipment, and that would be by capturing the technology advances as well. So basically, our plan is to start with relatively low maps that are significantly below the current and future EU levels, but we're taking it one step at a time, because we are allowing the industry to adjust slowly to the new maps, and particularly the local manufacturers, because or else we will be affecting them negatively. So our main point is to keep also the local manufacturers involved with us, and to have them agree and to have them more collaboratively working with us on setting the new maps when we hopefully achieve the ones that are within the future EU levels. So the proposed maps for air conditioning, they are also another big energy saving opportunity in the country. They take the lowest performing appliances of the market and rebalance it at a higher level. So 30% of the AC models will be banned and 43% will be in the lowest classes. And we are hopefully looking to achieve that in the coming future. This is the very ambitious roadmap for Lebanon that we are looking forward to achieve, and that would be only by the assistance and technical assistance of the Cool Up program and their support on developing maps, on having more levies on HFC, high energy efficiency appliances in the country, as well as building standards, technical and training certification programs, and more awareness and capacity building for the service sector and for the technicians. And in 2040, we are looking for more restated maps and labels for our appliances, the phase out of HFCs, and the 90% recycling and gas destruction, in order to achieve in 2050, hopefully, all electricity to be supplied in the country from renewable energy and zero carbon coding. So basically, that's everything I wanted to mention, and I would love to hear your questions, or if you have any more details you would like me to present on the National Cooling Plan. We can also share the link so you can have like a proper read on the NCP. It's on the UNCP website as well of the country. Thank you, everyone.
Great, really great presentation.
Thank you. Should I stay here if you guys have questions?
Yes, and as I said, I think you were first, yeah, and then I have you on the list. Please ask questions. So Laura was very comprehensive. I think there was lots to ask.
I saw that you had air conditioning and domestic refrigeration, but why is there no commercial refrigeration? Because you referred only to the IC24 and not to the 89. The IC standard 89 for commercial refrigeration, and also the maps. Is that part of the project or not?
It is, but the low-hanging fruits and the ones that we that were presented in the NCP that can effectively and are effectively affecting the energy efficiency were the domestic refrigeration and the residential air conditioning. So that's why we're saying we will be starting on these two low-hanging fruits from the results of the RAC assessment that the team was working on.
Maybe just to add, it was of course also about the National Cooling Plan of Lebanon, but as I pointed out in the cooling project, we included everything except domestic refrigeration. So commercial refrigeration and commercial cooling and residential air conditioning, that's included in our project. So please.
This is Hassan Barak from Bahrain. First of all, I would like to thank Lebanon and Sister Lara for all this achievement, which we're so proud actually. And let me tell you, while you presented your presentation, I'm thinking to follow as a next step with this important achievement as I see. I have two questions with regard to the roadmap that you mentioned in the last slide.
Okay.
First one with regard to the gas restrictions, and second about the gas distractions. So I would like to, if you can elaborate more about the gas restrictions in 2020, and also about distraction. What do you mean distraction here? Is there any plan or distract the refrigerator or something else? So maybe you would like to elaborate more about these two things. Thank you.
Thank you, Hassan, and we would love to be leading and supporting Bahrain country at a later stage when you would want to implement and have the national cooling plan in your country. So regarding the F-gas restrictions in 2020, it's after ratifying Kigali Amendment, this is when we started having restrictions specifically on the F-gas, and we started informing more the importers and making and involving them in the awareness on F-gas restrictions and what are the restrictions under the new amendments for the Montreal Protocol. For destruction, specifically, there is no main destruction projects that are taking place in Lebanon, but along that in the common future, so we hope that we have more funds or projects to work on F-gas destruction. So I see my project manager, Mazen, would like to add something else.
Would like to have, yes, just take the mic.
Thank you, Lara. I think Lara explained this, but just to get back to Hassan, is our plan is, under the National Cooling Plan, is to plan ahead of any possibility for the recycling and destruction of F-gases. And I think, since you are an executive main manager, we will be soon discussing decisions on destruction where the MFF is planning to support financial contribution to destruction of HFCs. Naming that most of other countries, they have already some sort of destruction facilities like incinerators and cement plants where those F-gases can be easily destructed at those facilities. So our plan is not before 2025. We're saying about maybe recycling 50% by 2025 and 2030, 2040. We should really think of moving on with destruction of any unwanted F-gases. That's the plan of the city.
Thank you, Mazen.
Very good.
So,
I think you're next.
okay.
And then I have you.
Hi, I'm Noah Horowitz with the Clean Cooling Collaborative, formerly KSEP. Great presentation, and I like the holistic approach you took from understanding the market. I've got two questions if you can help me with. One is the 2025 level. Is that the effective date or the proposed date?
That is the proposed date.
Okay,
Yeah.
and it would go into effect X years later?
Yeah, but that is the proposed date from the National Cooling Plan.
Okay, and then could you talk a little bit, I was intrigued by whereas import levies on high HFC or high energy appliances. How would that work?
Actually, we will start with that point first with the customs and with the government of Lebanon, and that is everything that should be imported should pass by the Ministry of Environment, where the National Ozone Unit is collaboratively under the head of the of the Ministry of Environment. So we will try to have like no high energy appliances to be entering the country unless if there is like a certain approval or decision from the Minister of Environment, as well as there's the IRI, which is it's an institutional research center in Lebanon, so where they can help us in also trying to control the imports to the country. And that would be also achieved if we hopefully have maps and labels at that time. So then we will have more restrictions on what would be entering the country and how we can control that in an easier way.
And one last question, if I can. U4E, United for Efficiency, which is part of the UNEP program, they have a model regulation for air conditioners and refrigerators. And was that level considered, or are you thinking that would be the 2030 target?
I guess under the National Cooling Plan, if I'm not mistaken, that the team that was working on the NCP, the consortium, they were also in coordination. I mean, they were contacting the U4E, the United for Efficiency, and it was taken into consideration in the NCP results as well.
Thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
Great, then you had a question? You just speak up, or you also come.
Sure. Okay. Thank you very much, Mrs. Said Zamani from Saudi Arabia. First of all, I would like to thank Sister Lara for the excellent presentation, for the information being shared. And just my reflection here, any project to be implemented, I believe they consider the safety is first. So during your gap analysis and to execute this project and to work on it until 2050 here, what's the most safety concern being observed, and how can this mitigate it to improve the safety and can help to implement this project?
Thank you for the question, and this is really one important question because the main part of the NCP was capacity building, and that was capacity building and awareness on safety and safety measures, because the new natural gases that we'll be using are flammable. And we started first looking at the vocational schools in Lebanon, so all the programs that teach refrigeration and air conditioning. Basically, Lebanon already started last year in amending the curriculum of the vocational school for the RAC students, and we've been sending teachers from vocational schools to outside the country to have training on how to deal with the new refrigerants that are going to be used. And we are also trying to have like a three-year training program for all the service sector, and we are not only including vocational schools and the students that are now graduating, we are also looking at the students that already graduated. And right now, under the KIP project, we are trying to assess the service sector workshops, the legal and illegal ones, in order to achieve at a later stage higher range training for all the workshops that are in Lebanon and are working with the new gases, to have more awareness, to ensure them more, to prepare them for a proper technical training, and so that they know how to deal with the new gases and with the new emissions. Also, one thing I need to add is that we have been developing and renovating the RAC centers. Actually, we are calling them refrigeration air conditioning centers in vocational schools. So until now, we have renovated 3 RAC centers, and we are choosing different areas in coordination with the Ministry of Education, Higher Education, And why we are doing so? In order to ensure that the students that are graduating, they are also not taking their courses in theoretical part, they are also having labs where they can test everything and they can work and see everything and the importance of safety. Also under the maps, the stakeholders that are working were part of the NCP. It was very important to include the safety standards and the safety maps regarding the new gases. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And just one recommendation I can add. You have been highlighted a very excellent, and this if you can put one of your slides on the presentation for safety, because I have saw in the beginning slide only 3 pillars we work with it,
Yeah.
policies and technology, and the third one. If you embedded the safety part of your presentation,
Definitely.
this is will have a full picture about how you do.
Definitely, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for presentation. So,
Yeah.
yeah, of course.
Thank you. Congratulations for the excellent presentation. I have only 2 quick points. The first is you presented about the case of Lebanon. I would like to hear that as per their experience, is there any policy consideration for the countries, basically developing countries, what they can do? Just I have to take the case of Nepal. We have for the cooling system, we have protected about 45% of the total land covered by the forest, and plus 15 by the mountains and the other protected land. About 60% we have already protected for the cooling system in the case of Nepal. And we have the very small activities of the emission, just like our GDP contribution from the industry sector, manufacturing sector, about only 5 means low level of emission. So in that case, countries like Nepal, what would be the best to adopt and consider about policy issues as per your 3 lakhs approach you presented on the first slide? That is one. The second one is what would be the possible implication of the Industry 4.0, as we are discussing today about the Industry 4.0, about the cooling system and the Industry 4.0. Have you any study about that on Lebanon or not?
Regarding your second question, I'm not sure that we are working anything related now to Industry 4.0 or if we have like any projects that are being implemented in Lebanon. But I would like you to kindly repeat your first question so I can assist you more in that. You were asking about the policies that can be implemented by the Nepal government. Okay.
Basically, my question is, for the cooling system,
Okay.
countries like Nepal or any developing countries, they have already protected huge amount of forest and low level of emission. Just I mentioned about 60% already protected for the, let's say, climate change or ozone or this cooling system. Those countries, as per your practice, what are the recommendations? That could you highlight some of 1 or 2 that the government should start from that point?
Okay, so I'm not sure if your countries have already mandatory maps for RAC. So probably this would be a really important starting point, or if there is a RAC assessment that have been done already in the country. So if we start with a RAC assessment on how much the country have RAC systems, and we can be focusing on the major RAC equipment, and we can then look forward at developing maps or introducing maps to the country, and you can follow the lead of how Lebanon started with voluntary maps. So you can be focusing on voluntary maps and then taking it step at a time to have mandatory maps in order to achieve, your point. I'm not sure if I really answered your question, so just please let me know if you would like me to add anything else. You're most welcome.
Good, super. So it's very clear that you're very deep in the topic.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for
Andreas,
the
and
great
thank you
presentation.
everyone for listening. Thank you.
Yeah, great. So I think that was really an example of a country that took the lead in developing national cooling action plans. And I hope this is very inspiring also for other countries. And I'm sure Lara is open to also answer more questions when you approach her.
Definitely. Just share my email, and I'm ready.
Okay, then let's go to the next session. I would like to introduce Etienne Gunnar. He represents UNDP. He is allocated in the Montreal Protocol Chemicals and Waste Unit. He is a technical specialist for sustainable cooling, chemicals and waste management. Based in New York, he supports development and implementation of projects and initiatives related to sustainable cooling and to achieving zero waste. Previously based in Istanbul, he was a regional technical advisor for the Montreal Protocol, chemicals and waste projects, mostly in Africa. He previously worked at UNEP and at the energy and environmental consultancy Synapse Energy Economics. He has also a very suitable background as a master's degree from the US Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, because as we've seen, you need it all, the finance, the technology, and the policy, and so I'm very happy to have you here, Etienne, to present a bit more about tangible technology that we've seen at the recent Chilventa Fair, and that also gives a glimpse that the technology is actually already there to really implement what Lara, for example, has just presented to us. So,
thank you very much, Andreas. Always difficult to come after Lara. An excellent presentation. So, but maybe also to rebound on the question from Nepal, I think it was very good focus on MEPS, mandatory efficiency standards that was mentioned by Lara. And I think also the important thing is to consider and seek maybe some assistance to lead this national cooling plan. I don't know if Nepal has already one or is considering one, but it's definitely a good occasion to put all the elements together on the refrigerant side, on the energy efficiency, and to see indeed what would be most appropriate in the case of the particular country, because obviously every country has specificity, but this is, for us, for example, in Kulab, so UNDP is a partner, as was presented by Andreas, and it's what we have been recommending for the 3 other countries, apart from Lebanon, so the 3 other countries, and we've been recommending this activity that they do first this national cooling action plan. So, yeah, we talked a bit then about regulations and generally about the project. One other element is the technology part. It's not meant to be, obviously, in 10-15 minutes, a comprehensive view of all the natural cooling options. We, as Andres mentioned, we took a few examples from the recent Chilventa conference, and we wanted to show this, and maybe it would be good to start the discussion if you have other points that you would like to highlight. But so the first part is a little bit of a general introduction on the approach and what we're trying to support through sustainable cooling, what we mean by sustainable cooling through this project, through the Kulab project. So first is to put a little bit in the holistic view, or the bigger picture, that of course here, and we are all more familiar with this part, with active measures related to sustainable cooling, and that's the equipment, sustainable air conditioning, using natural refrigerants, or aiming to go towards natural refrigerants, or at least lowest GWP. So in our project, of course, we're focusing on these natural refrigerants and promoting it. But we also want to sort of put it in the overall context of whatever can be done in terms of design of housing and buildings. This is also a strong competency of Guidehouse that has implemented other similar projects on buildings in the region, and that can benefit to this project as well. So you can see, of course, the different elements: holistic planning, meaning to design early for sustainable cooling when you're preparing for buildings, and to think of compact design, orientation of buildings, shading, for reducing basically the need for cooling. The passive measures as well are quite important here, and that's also something that's been presented and promoted, for example, in the Clean Cooling Collaborative. Some of these basically solutions that don't require a high upfront cost, but can be very efficient as well in complement to sustainable cooling equipment. So, for example, adequate insulation or the roof walls specifications to limit the need for cooling. Also, a very important part, the operation. So, avoid the overcooling of buildings, for example. I'm just mentioning here that, interestingly, within UNDP, we also have what we call greening moonshot, which is to reduce the emissions from our own buildings. And that's one of the recommendations that we're giving, that often there is overcooling of our buildings in our organization even. And the last element you're probably more familiar, of course, whenever possible, couple the sustainable cooling to renewable energy sources, solar or other. Also, in the bigger picture of energy efficiency and the potential impact of sustainable cooling, just for us to remember and get the sort of order of magnitude that using air conditioners and electric fan to stay cool already accounts for 20% of the total electricity used in buildings around the world and 10% of global electricity. Quite already a massive contribution, and global energy demand for cooling is expected to triple by 2050. So that comes from an assessment from the International Energy Agency. And when we look at the 2021 report of the IEA, we see that government, of course, have started implementing policies favoring efficiency investment in the building sector, particularly in Europe. So maybe there is more effect in Europe and potentially replication that could be done in other regions. And energy efficiency can bring some of the fastest and most cost-effective impact in terms of CO2 emission reduction. So actually, in the net zero emissions by 2050 scenario that IEA has published as part of this report, the plan was the energy intensity of the global economy was to improve by 35%. Also there is, and coming from UNDP, we look at this sustainable development aspect. The building retrofits, the more efficient appliances, other measures, is also bringing potential in terms of creation of green employment, green jobs. And so there's a lot of jobs in construction as well as installation, maintenance of heating, cooling, and hot water systems that can be promoted by these policies. And that's also highlighting the importance of the training programs so that the skills are there to implement these policies. And that's also why you find in Kula quite important component related to the support to training. And that, of course, is complementing the sort of the core work that each of the countries are doing already through the support of the multilateral fund. So the idea is really to complement and see where we can add added value to really what has been done and what is being implemented by the countries. I think it was quite clear in what Lara has presented for Lebanon. And finally, a little bit sort of the summary of our approach that is promoted through the project for sustainable cooling. So you can see that on one side, we want to have zero or negligible CO2 equivalent emissions through the sustainable cooling. That means, of course, the direct emissions, so through natural refrigerants or not-in-kind cooling systems, but also to minimize the indirect CO2 equivalent emission, energy efficiency, or coupling with the renewable energy supply. And also, another element is about the no persistent degradation products from the refrigerants. So here it's, of course, giving priority to natural refrigerants as opposed to synthetic refrigerants or not-in-kind solution as indicated here. So after this little bit of general introduction on why we focus on technology, both on the refrigerant management and energy efficiency, and why we also want to promote some pilot projects in each of the 4 countries that will test these new technologies in the 4 countries and draw lessons from it. We wanted to give you some examples that were drawn and noted during Chilvanta conference recently held in Germany. So I think most of you are familiar with it here, with this conference. But basically, that's an occasion to see the new developments presented by the manufacturers around the world. It has grown quite a lot since 2008 and its first edition. After 4 years, it was the first conference that was presented. And as you can see, 844 exhibitors from 43 countries. You can get a sense of what basically the trends are and the new developments from there. And interestingly, quite a few, and we will come back to it, quite a few from the region, from these 4 countries, particularly Turkey had a lot of representatives and companies. Interesting to see also the main themes that transpired from the presentations and the booths that were included there in Chilvanta, focusing on the sustainability of the cooling products, the refrigerant transition challenges, and that's of course related. It was mentioned earlier by Saudi Arabia about the safety, but also to the general current discussions about the proposal for the new EU F-gas regulation, which of course will have quite an impact on the choices of refrigerants in Europe, but also in other markets, including in the Middle East and Turkey. Also, a lot of discussions about the large-scale deployment of heat pumps. That's obviously a trend that we are aware of, and the question of the decomposition of refrigerants was also discussed, so in particular related to HFOs. Some of the main remarks that natural refrigerants seem to have really become the mega trend at Chilvanta. It's not new, but it's confirmed after these 4 years. A lot of new developments. As I mentioned, there were some representatives from the cool-up countries, because of course we went there. So I was not present there, but the team was present there from the cool-up program. And the idea was to see, okay, what is applicable in each of the 4 countries, what is already produced in the countries, and a topic that we discuss a lot, what is the availability of these technologies in the 4 countries in the region. And interestingly, as I mentioned, many companies from Turkey, but also, for example, Petra from Jordan, a large manufacturer of AC, was also represented. As you can see here, some of the advertisements about the natural refrigerants that were that were displayed during the Chilvanta. Maybe one important, because obviously this is a key recurrent topic, when would the R290 split unit be really available in the markets? And it's not meant to be comprehensive. There were several, of course, presentations, but just to mention one of them, for example, the Media Group, Clivet introduced their R290 split unit that is already available in Germany. So they explained that they have 1,000 units that were already sold in Germany by the time of Chilvanta in 2022, and also they indicated their interest and availability to make it available in the club countries, for club countries. And that's also important that the countries are ready also in terms of infrastructure to be able to, in terms of safety training, to be able to use this new type of technologies. Interestingly, the last point here was about media having a tool that allows an assessment for the unit, whether it can be placed in certain rooms based on the specifics of these rooms. So maybe something of interest. Here, we wanted to mention that's a little bit further research, but it can be interesting in terms also of coupling, particularly with renewable energy sources, and also because ELK, as was mentioned by Andreas, is one of the partners of CoolUp. So you can see that they do indeed research and development of new technology. So here it's ice slurry based cold thermal energy storage and distribution that they developed using water as refrigerant. So it can be used for medium to large scale storage and distribution. So within site or through networks, so district cooling, for example, and has quite a wide range of application. Quite an interesting use of water as refrigerant and ice as a way to store basically the cooling, and that can help for example, if the renewable energy source is not available 24 hours, that helps storing this cooling. First pilots are ongoing in Germany, and they hope to commercialize soon, as I understand. But Andreas can provide a little bit more information. We discussed with them, I understand, in Chile. Again, picking some examples, but it was interesting to see that there was a lot of focus on new compressor types, really designed specifically for propane for R290. So here that was an example for Tecumseh, a global leader in manufacturers from the US, that they have sales and distribution in the region that are of interest, including in Egypt, at least some sales representative, and already available in some of these markets. So they were insisting on the better efficiency that can be provided through this new type of compressors. So compressors, here we can see that's the type that is used here in this type of equipment. A lot of equipment presented here as well, for example, from manufacturers like Carrier. And a lot of these solutions really focusing on models using natural refrigerants. Of course, in commercial refrigeration, and we know that has been quite strong for several years, the CO2-based equipment. That's again confirmed through the Chilvanta how much new options are available for commercial refrigeration with CO2-based equipment, but also R290 for this type of display cabinets. Other trends, and here you see 2 or 3 slides, interesting display of new products that are basically focusing on closed cabinet in supermarkets. So basically adding these doors to avoid to reduce the energy use by this equipment. Maybe just if you go back to the previous one, just to mention, that there are some obviously technology challenges, and also if you want marketing challenges, that you want to keep obviously the relation to the customer, so that you still have very much enlightened products, and also that you don't at the same time create some heat by the light that is actually it would be increasing the energy demand for the cooling of the product. So there's all these technologies that have been presented by several of these manufacturers on how these doors can be designed to basically have a minimal energy use. So maybe the next slide is just an example, because 2 Turkish companies presented their work with this type of display cabinets. Interestingly as well, it's both new cabinets, but also they can do some retrofitting of existing cabinets, adding this door. So they have basically the methodology to complement the existing cabinets. And here, another of these manufacturers that was from Italy. What was interesting particularly here is that in their assessment, they need to, of course, confirm and double check, but there was up to 60% gain in terms of energy efficiency. Also, and here you can see that we're going away just from mentioning some example related to the compressors or the basically generation of sustainable cooling, but also looking at basically the control measures that can be used and are more and more developed. So here it's developed by Carrel, systems that are basically monitoring the temperature and basically the functioning or malfunctioning of both refrigeration or AC units, and that can help to take very quick corrective actions, and also to basically monitor from remotely the temperature. There are some applications obviously that don't need to be at the same temperature when They are, for example, for cold beverages when they are offered to customers, and maybe when the store is closed and they can reduce the temperature. So that facilitates this type, basically, of remote controls. Not obviously available for, not applicable for all types of products, but for some of them, yes. So drawing to an end for this presentation, and basically, so some of the challenges that obviously remain, the elevated initial capital costs. We cannot hide also that for a lot of these new equipment using natural refrigerants, there is still a difference often of price with maybe the more mainstream technologies. So that is why there is a focus also in Kulak on finding financing solutions, to help pass this initial hurdle of the cost, of the upfront cost. And as mentioned, like Andreas says, cooperation with institutions like the Frankfurt School of Economics to look at these financial instruments that can help overcome this barrier. There's issues, of course, infrastructure is not always developed for all these new technologies, be it on the new type of refrigerants or energy efficiency aspect. So Kulak is trying to help manufacturers and to showcase the evidence and the possible solutions for manufacturing. And also, some of the technologies are not necessarily available in the 4 countries, but as you could see, more and more are, at least from the manufacturing, what the manufacturers, what they are indicating in this type of trade fairs. And Kulak will be trying to facilitate its knowledge transfer and information. And that's it. As you could see, very quick overview of some of the, it was not comprehensive, and actually some others may complement about new developments. But if you want more information, that's also the interest of this Kulak project, that there are technical experts that can also complement, give other ideas, other products that can be presented and explained in case of interest. Thank you very much.
Very good, thank you very much. As Etienne said, of course there was lots more to see, also on commercial refrigeration at Chilventa, but we just wanted to give a glimpse that we really have a lot of innovation and available products that really can implement the objective of this conference, of course, but also the objective of the Kulak project. So that's good to see, and of course now the floor is yours again to ask questions to Etienne or also to me, or further questions to Lara if you have on the Kulak project or the technologies or on other aspects. Yes, please. Just briefly introduce yourself, maybe.
Yes. Maxwell from Zambia. So thanks Etienne. The question is on Etienne on the new technology, the one using water. Is that for cooler countries or it's meant to be viable for global markets?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very new development of one of our project partners, which is in principle totally versatile, so it's not restricted to cooler countries at all. So one of the applications that I really could see is, for example, if you would like to have district cooling, so cooling of whole districts, not just, so to say, individual building by building, but you really have a central system that distributes the cold through a quarter of a city or a whole city, for example. And as Etienne explained, it really provides a very nice match to renewable electricity generation. So, for example, over the day you could really generate a cold and create this ice slurry, which has a great storage effect, obviously, because it is ice. So you will get easily over the night with this ice slurry to cool your buildings also overnight, and then the next day you can refresh, so to say, this cooling storage. So that's one of the applications, and I think there are also a lot of other applications where I'm then also not the expert in, but that would be a very nice application. And as Etienne pointed out, we have these experts of IAK in the project, and if you really would like to get more details on that, of course you can contact us, and then we will get you in touch with these colleagues. Yes, please.
Thank you again for the nice presentation on Angola, and where we are very much happy to be part of this program. And I would like to thank Guidance for giving us the opportunity to participate in this event with a lovely presentation from Lara about Lebanon, and we are very pleased to help in this for countries that feel they need some technical assistance on how we prepare and how we manage to prepare the international food plan for Lebanon. I have one very direct question to Etienne, and I know your expertise in the field, and I want your personal views on how do you think, knowing now that we are talking about KIPs, HFC phase down, energy efficiency, what would on the air conditioning sector, what would be your views, personal views, not as an agency, as a technical person, how countries should approach the phase down of HFCs? Should countries, I mean, about 85 countries where they manufacture appliances related to air conditioning, do you think that it is advisable that they move from HFCs to hydrocarbons, or they should move from a high GWP refrigerant to an interim period of time to a low global warming potential refrigerant, then afterwards moving into zero refrigerant or natural gases? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a little bit big question at the moment, obviously, and I can understand it's a dilemma for industry manufacturers, as you say, assemblers and manufacturers in developing countries. You know, basically, should we go, for example, to R32, which is like GWP lower than what is R410A or others, or should we go for R290? I think what was interesting, probably from the Chivanta and also from the recent development in the F-gas regulation, is that the move towards hydrocarbons, so really low GWP solution, is coming quite soon in Europe. That's at least the messages that are being given. So, of course, this impacts the other markets. So I think that's the one that really needs to be taken into account generally by the industry worldwide. It seems the signals are towards this early move towards R290. And I think when we also consider, as we know, the urgency of the climate crisis, probably this is something that would, if possible, indicate the directions to go. Yeah, that would be probably the reflection I would say at this point. Definitely in the case of Cool, because this is also what our partners and funders are supporting. The position of the German government and the EKI program is definitely saying, leapfrog to R290 whenever possible, and ask, if possible, the support, whatever support can be provided through this type of project, so that indeed you don't have this intermediary period with another HFC, although with a lower GWP. Is that okay?
Yeah. Maybe just very briefly to add, that was also one of the major takeaways I had from the talks with the industry at Chilventa, that they really said, in principle, we are ready. Many of them really had natural refrigerant-based solutions, and they just said, we just need a clear signal from policy, and then we will be ready to switch. So that was really the key message that you could get from manufacturers, because many of them now also offer parallel solutions. For example, just as an example, I think it was Panasonic, they had on their booth, I mean this is a heat pump example, but it doesn't matter, they had the R32 solution, but they also had the R290 solution already, which they introduced, and they said, okay, this is just a matter of what signal we get from policy, and we have it, we can do it, and we are ready. Sorry, you had a question?
Yeah, very quick one. Thank you for the presentation. As you mentioned that industries are developing new products with new technologies, with new innovation, and the demand is largely increasing. As we heard in the plenary also, 100,000 plus flights per day. In the plenary we heard that. So in that case, how to balance with these type of demand products and the cooling system of the country or nation? Let us say global cooling system. I think that is not limited as per the country or the nation level. So how to balance? This is not my question, this is my confusion, I think.
I think it was more a remark, right? Or was it a question? Or?
Confusion. I am just wondering, yeah, that the product are innovative, sophisticated, the energy is demanding more and more, 100,000 plus flights, international flights per day, they are producing emissions, and we have to balance with our national cooling plan, cooling system to overall plan, global plan, let us say. So at that case, at the UN or UNDP, what would be the best suggestion for us, for the countries, for the parties?
Yeah, I think one of the elements that we try to do, we try to do through the MNF projects, but also through the cooler, is to demonstrate these technologies in the country, because you can say it works and it's available in one country, like a manufacturer will usually tell you, yeah, of course. But often for the transformation of the market to happen, they have to have seen it once, maybe, and be sure that indeed it will work. So, for example, a new CO2 system in a supermarket where there's not been too many CO2 yet because of the climate or evolution of the technology. So you present it, and you would support one company to pay for the incremental cost, the additional one, and test it and draw the lessons and see also the financial dimension. So that is one of the things that we would like to be doing in the second part, let's say, of the project, so that indeed the industry and the other actors can see that, okay, it can be done, natural refrigerants can be applied under these conditions in the country. I don't know if it helps a bit, but for example, in the HPMPs right now, you don't do too much support of end users, because that's generally the approach of the multilateral fund, that end users program, there's more limitations, so a supermarket will not receive funding to test new technology. So these type of projects don't have necessarily this limitation, multilaterals, so they can indeed focus on a little bit different actors in the economy that can be supported to demonstrate the technology. And also the lesson that you learn from these demonstration projects, well, that's useful for the banks, for example, to know, okay, what will be the return, okay, and we have this example in the country, so yeah, maybe we will participate in a financial program that will provide funding for loans, concession loans for other supermarkets or other actors in the country.
Yeah, maybe briefly to add, because again, it's always very much technology focused. We've had a very nice example from Jordan, where one manufacturer, Upteam, explained to us one of these CO2 cooling projects in supermarkets, and he said, you really need to take care that you do not just look at the technology, so what was the additional investment probably, and the reduced electricity cost, but he said, we have with the system close to zero maintenance, no dropouts, it's just running smoothly, and what it really improves, and that saves the most of the money, is that we do not have food waste anymore, because he says in our typical applications in supermarkets, for example, we have to throw away like 1/3 of the food, because we have dropouts of the cooling system, for example, and we don't have it with this new system. That's a very big advantage that is not at all technical at first sight, but what really needs to be taken into consideration in the business case, for example, when you present these new technologies to the financial sector, for example. Any other questions? Okay, I see no more questions. Then I would like to thank you very much. To thank everybody in this room who found his or her way to our presentation, and of course again to Laura and to Etienne for the great presentations. And if you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to contact us. I think we have also a slide that makes it easier for you to contact us on different aspects of the project. And I've seen one raise their hand.
Egypt.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I just want to say that we are part of this program. No, it's okay. No, yeah,
it's loud enough. Okay.
I mean, Egypt is part of the COLA program. Of course, we are very happy to